Probably more than any other long trail in the United States, the Appalachian Trail is known for its social aspect, what some hikers call the trail family. This social aspect refers mainly to dealing with other hikers, meeting other hikers, and interacting with other hikers. It's been estimated at least 3 million people walk at least briefly on the AT every year. At certain times of the year, the trail can get relatively crowded. The best example is when hundreds of aspiring thru hikers start at the southern end in early spring. Some people think this social aspect is great, and others don't. It has its good side and what some see as its bad side. The good side is the vast majority of long-distance hikers are friendly, sober, and hardworking. In an emergency, long-distance hikers are often in a position to help others and are willing to help. I will describe one situation where a hiker went to great lengths to help others. Hikers can also interact with trail angels. These are not hikers, but people living close to the trail who voluntarily provide food and support, mostly to thru hikers. This is called trail magic, and it's much appreciated by those receiving it. Trail angels are so generous that once I understood the tradition, I was almost stunned that so many people are willing to help so many strangers. Not everyone will appreciate being surrounded by a crowd on the AT when a crowd forms. Crowds will form wherever hikers stop for the night, at shelters, hostels, or in towns. And if members of a crowd are loud, drunk, inconsiderate, or using drugs, some other hikers might find this irritating. Among other things, we'll look at ways to keep contact with hikers at a minimum, if that's what we want. For a section hiker, this is fairly easy to do. It will be difficult for northbound thru hikers to avoid others at the trail's southernmost end. Once they get farther north, however, solitude becomes more of a possibility. Before my first section hike, I basically bought some maps and a guidebook and drove to the AT with a friend. Until I got on the AT, I had no idea that hikers took on trail names. I had no idea hikers wrote in trail journals at AT shelters and lean-tos. I had no idea what trail magic was. I had no idea there were hostels along the AT. Because I had no idea these things existed, social interaction with other hikers had absolutely nothing to do with my motivation to hike on the AT. Even so, almost all the hikers I talked to were completely likable and friendly. When I did encounter groups of 4 or more thru hikers, as often as not they would stick to themselves. These groups also were well-mannered. Of course, I try to be a friendly and witty guy and be cordial to whoever I meet. I have watched other hikers and asked them questions because I'm a compulsive journalist, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm always interested in how things are done. I have had long conversations with other hikers only infrequently. Even when I have shared a shelter with other hikers, we didn't do that much talking. I once read the opinion that outrageous behavior is normal on the AT and is not to be criticized. As I mentioned in another video, I was young once and often misbehaved. I understand this behavior, but I outgrew it. At least I think I did. As I have said many times, hiking hundreds of miles on the AT is a huge amount of work. Time and again, the hikers I have met on the AT had either the vaguely irritated look or the blank stare of somebody who is expending a serious physical effort. So how on earth can somebody have the energy to party when they are working so hard? One answer is they are either young or trying hard to stay young. I do think those who party take the time to party. Thru hikers tend to be obsessed with visiting towns along the trail, usually for good reasons. Some of the criticism about hard partying hikers has occurred in such towns. If there's a lot of revelry and dope smoking on the trail itself, I have to think the majority of it happens in the early weeks for northbound thru hikers. That's when a large number of them are jammed into a fairly small area of the trail. If they really follow the white blazes all the way north, I would expect they're going to run out of marijuana sooner or later. I have no idea how anybody is going to find dealers along the entire AT unless that trail family is a lot cozier than I think it is. If we want to hike the entire AT and see as few other hikers as possible, we have 2 basic options. One is to hike southbound. The great majority of thru hikers hike northbound, and they create much bigger crowds. Northbound thru hikers might start in February or April, but most will start in March. Southbound through hikers, on the other hand, usually begin in June or July. The other option is to section hike and take a couple of years to do the entire trail. If we avoid Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina in the spring, we will see far fewer through hikers. As I have said, I have made multiple section hikes in September. I met only section hikers and day hikers in September, and not very many of them. One section hiker I met told me he had covered long distances in October and November, and the trail was basically deserted. On the other hand, what if we love crowds and we want to be surrounded by new friends during an AT through hike? One thing that happens is all through hikers don't move at the same speed. As they head north, they will become scattered, as many move quite fast and many are a lot slower. The farther we are from the southern terminus, the less likely we are to run into a horde of through hikers. This means that the through hikers themselves will see less and less of each other the farther north they travel. A lot of them will drop out. Also, those who get sick or injured will fall behind the others. I have done quite a bit of southbound hiking. A number of times I have encountered solitary through hikers who had lost contact with their buddies, and they would ask me if I had seen them. In trail journals, I have repeatedly read messages left by through hikers telling their friends where they might find them in case their friends were following them. These folks seemed very eager to hook back up with their pals. This means an aspiring through hiker who wants to bask in the warmth of the trail family might instead find themselves all alone without a cell phone signal in the Virginia mountains, like an abandoned puppy. If we begin a northbound through hike in March, it's almost guaranteed that at some point we will be surrounded by other hikers like packed sardines. At some places, this would be very hard to avoid. One place is the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Through hikers have to pay for permits, and they have to sleep inside shelters if there is room. If I was a through hiker, I would dread the walk through the Smokies. I have repeatedly said hiking on the AT is accompanied by many inconveniences that cannot be avoided. I accept these inconveniences and put up with them. If I ever attempt a through hike, crowds will be added to that list. When things get quite bad, some, if not most, through hikers will help others. I once read in a trail journal of a drama that occurred just before I arrived there. One hiker had arrived at that shelter to find a pair of hikers. One of those hikers was dead in his sleeping bag of an apparent heart attack. The other hiker was understandably distraught. The hiker who told the story in the journal walked to a road, made a phone call, waited there for emergency personnel, led them to the shelter, accompanied the surviving hiker to the road, and helped secure transportation for that hiker. This consumed the Good Samaritan's entire day. If any of us collapse unconscious on the AT, odds are high that hikers who find us will do all they can to help. The worst hiker I ever met was a sociopath, borderline or otherwise, that I met at a hostel. Minutes after I met him, he threw a wild, off-the-wall accusation at me, which I didn't quite hear. But my friend did hear it and said, quote, "He doesn't do that," with a laugh, which apparently satisfied the sociopath. But another hiker who stayed inside the hostel with this character told us the guy was, quote, "crazy and scary, and he wanted to get away from him as quickly as he could." At that same hostel, my friend and I stayed in our tents in the yard. After most of us had hit the sack, some teenagers were running around in the yard and they were loud. My friend is a professional gymnastics coach. From the inside of his tent, he started yelling at the teens like they were his own team. It worked, and the kids quieted down immediately. I earlier told the story of a father and two sons who ran out of water. They were weekend hikers who left food packages in a shelter fireplace before I got out of my tent in the morning. I carried that trash out, and that is the grand total of the offensive behavior I have seen along the AT. At the start of another section hike, I was driving on a dirt road to a spot where I would park my car next to the AT. On the way, I saw a young guy walking on the road ahead of me, carrying a 12-pack of beer. I knew he had to be a hiker, and I gave him a ride to the trail. He'd already made a big dent in the 12-pack and was pretty sloppy. He told me he pitched his tent near the road and wasn't hiking that day. That was a good idea because he couldn't walk a straight line. He was a friendly young guy, and I was not offended that he was drunk. I was happy to help him off the road before he stumbled in front of a dump truck. I hope he got the empty 12-pack to a trash can. So what's my secret for not hanging around a crowd of other hikers? I try to avoid places where the crowds sleep. As I have said, I have slept in AT shelters only infrequently. My tarp tents let me do this. My tents are more than just a place to sleep. I consider them items designed to fill a specific task. They are portable man caves where I can spend a lot of time, relax, and clutter my stuff around on the inside like a junkyard. While this applies to the sill shelter I have used and described previously, it really applies to the tarp tents I made myself. As I have said in another video, I specifically created those tents for stealth camping during bow hunting trips in late fall and winter. This meant I spent many hours inside the tents. Because they have no floor, I could burn a candle inside or crawl in with muddy boots on, things I wouldn't do with a commercial tent that had a floor. I also can pitch them fast and in the dark, so I just transferred this system from the hunting woods to the AT. On one 8-day AT trip, I spent one night in a shelter. The other 7 nights were in my tent at least 50 yards from a shelter, or at a designated campsite with no shelter, or stealth camping in the woods. In another video, I will tell how I made this floorless tarp tent. It can go up with only 4 stakes if I'm in a hurry, and it uses no guy lines. It weighs 20 ounces without stakes. When I hiked on the AT with my daughter, we didn't sleep near any shelters. We stealth camped and stayed at a couple of campgrounds in the Shenandoah National Park. Aside from saying hello to others on the trail, in an entire week, she talked to only one other hiker. Anyone interested in stealth camping along the AT should watch my Bedtime on the Appalachian Trail video. In it, I describe my stealth camping approach in detail. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy in late summer 2015 said it would step up its efforts to promote best hiking practices on the trail. This refers to carrying out our own trash, following the rules at different localities, etc. If this effort increases support for mature behavior on the trail itself, maybe it will do the same among hikers wherever they stop for the night. And if that happens, the majority of hikers will find each other easy to get along with. And with that, we are once again done. I'd like to thank all those who have subscribed, and if you have not subscribed, please do so. It would be very much appreciated. And as always, thanks for watching.